Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, as always, Matthew Quinn, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you guys all for tuning in tonight. We have another great show for you today. We're going to be diving into the NFL draft pretty heavily in the next coming days here, just because the NFL draft is coming up here at the end of this week on Thursday. So we're going to talk a lot about the NFL draft leading up to and, of course, afterwards, and reviewing everything that everybody did, all the teams and all that. So that's going to be pretty heavy in today's show, as well as, the rest of the week. But make sure you stick around for later in the show when I'm going to be giving you a College Corner segment at the very end. We're going to be talking about the Washington Huskies and what their 2025 season might look like. So definitely stick around for that. But before we start, I would like to ask that you guys like and follow the show as always. If you've got a question or a comment that you want to add to the show, we definitely want to hear it as always. If you want to go ahead and do that, you can hit the super chat button. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and your insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message gets heard and stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. You just use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a great way to support the channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every bit of your support. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button. Let's keep this show interactive and exciting, and if you prefer, you can also go to the website at gsmcsports.net to tip, donate, and leave a question or a comment there. Couldn't do what we do without you guys and your amazing support, and we're thankful to have you as part of our community. So once again, that link is gsmcsports.net. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the show. To start the show, we're just going to kind of go around the NFL here, just with some NFL news. Not a ton happening, just teams kind of hunkering down and getting ready for the NFL draft. That's later this week, of course, but a couple of things that have happened. Voluntary workouts. Some teams have begun opening their facilities to the players and all of that. 17 teams today opened voluntary workouts. I'm not going to go through all of 17 of the teams, but just some notable teams. The Eagles and Chiefs, the Super Bowl contenders, Ravens, Bills, Steelers, Bucks, and Chargers, Rams, a bunch of teams. This is kind of just standard procedure. On Tuesday, the remaining 8 teams that have not already opened their voluntary workouts, they're going to go ahead and do that with returning head coaches to begin their off-season workout programs with the team. 7 clubs with new head coaches opened phase 1 of their voluntary programs in the previous weeks. Phase 1 consists of just the first 2 weeks of the program, during which activities are just limited to, things like meetings, strength and conditioning, lifting weights, workouts, stuff like that, physical rehab, all those kinds of things. So just kind of, just pretty much all of the little small things that you kind of don't really hear a lot about. That's kind of what's going on here in the next few weeks or the next few days leading up to the draft. The Bears, Jags, Raiders, and Jets, they opened voluntary minicamp today. And voluntary minicamps must be held before the draft, but no earlier than the 3rd week of the offseason program. So that's why you've got some teams kind of getting the ball rolling now. With the draft, of course, is on Thursday. So a lot of things are just kind of moving into place for NFL teams as they get ready for that. But as far as the draft is concerned, the growing belief is that Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 pick to the Tennessee Titans. That's pretty much the overwhelming favorite at this point. It's going to be a stunner if he's not drafted by the Titans. That's just kind of where they stand right now. The next 2 picks are kind of a toss-up between really 2 players, and we'll talk more about it when we get into the mock draft. But, different players being mocked to the Browns and to the Giants, whether it's Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, whatever the case. But after Ward, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, There's really just Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe possibly as possibly early options, whether that's first round or, early second round. Just those are kind of the guys that you need to just kind of keep an eye on as the draft goes along, because they've been mocked to several different teams. They've been mocked kind of all over the draft, really, at this point. I've seen Shedeur Sanders mocked to the Raiders early on before they got Geno Smith, and I saw him get mocked to the Steelers for a little while there. And recently it's been the Saints, as they've had some complications with Derek Carr and his possible injury. Not really sure exactly what's going on with that shoulder there. Just kind of one of those things that just kind of appeared out of nowhere as far as the news was concerned. Nobody really heard anything about that. So with that kind of up in the air, they're kind of on that list of teams that might be in the market for a quarterback in this draft. But who knows, maybe they'll just sign a veteran and ride with that veteran and then get their quarterback in a much better quarterback class next offseason. But, we'll see on Thursday, when all of our answers or all of our questions are answered for the most part in terms of the NFL draft and everything. And also don't forget about Tyler Shock. He's the Louisville quarterback. That's one of the older quarterbacks that are still available as far as rookies are concerned. There has been comparisons to, Cleveland's Brandon Weeden when Brandon Weeden came out, because he was an older quarterback and didn't really have a ton of success when he moved along into the NFL. Not saying that's going to happen with Tyler Shock, but it's a possibility when you've got a guy that's kind of up there in age, but he still has a few quality things that you can look for in a quarterback, but I wouldn't put him as a first rounder or anything like that. But day 3 option possibly is what I would say. Maybe day 2, depending on what team decides to take a risk on him. Day 2 could be possible, maybe in the 3rd round or something like that. But with the Saints picking 9th, that kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into everything in terms of quarterbacks. So depending on what they do, maybe they decide that they want to go and get a quarterback in the later rounds, and maybe Tyler Shock is there, and they go ahead and snatch him up instead of getting a guy in the 1st round. Like some people might think they will. And I mean, I happen to be one of those people. I do think they're going to probably go quarterback in the 1st round. But as far as that is concerned, we'll have to wait and see. Some other news surrounding the draft. The Steelers have been in the news recently about possibly trading back, and possibly even trading out of the 1st round altogether. I know there is a situation in which they want to get their 2nd round pick back that they had to give up in order to get DK Metcalf. But as far as I'm concerned, if they do not do that and they don't pick up a 2nd round pick, it's not really a big deal, because you could say that they might have went wide receiver with the 2nd round pick had they not picked DK Metcalf in the offseason through trade with the Seattle Seahawks. But now that they've done that, they don't have a need for wide receivers, so you could kind of almost say that, okay, well, they spent their 2nd round pick on a wide receiver already, and he's, just happens to be DK Metcalf. So I wouldn't be terribly upset if they didn't get their 2nd round pick back, but I know that there has been interest that they have expressed in terms of getting that 2nd round pick back. Whether they would give up a 1st round pick in order to do that somehow in some form of trade, I don't know. I don't think they would do that. Omar Khan has been pretty good with the NFL drafts as far as, his couple of years that he's been the GM now. So I like what he has done so far. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of manages this coming NFL draft. It's not clear really right now, as far as the Steelers are concerned, whether or not they can count on Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback. So quarterback is a possibility at 21. I don't think that they ultimately will draft a quarterback at 21. I do think they will draft a quarterback at some point in this draft. I absolutely 100% believe that. But the 21st pick, I think they possibly go defensive tackle there. Possibly Derek Harmon from Oregon. I know I've heard a lot of things about him possibly being mocked to the Steelers. Wouldn't surprise me if they went that route. Kenneth Grant, too, if he happens to still be available, that could be an option as well. So either one of those guys, but it's a pretty deep defensive line class, so they should be able to get a quality player no matter who they select at that position, at that spot in the draft. There's some other news in regards to the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, they have overhauled their entire quarterback room this offseason, but the general manager, John Schneider, actually might not be done from a recent interview that he had leading up to the draft. Of course, the Seahawks went ahead and traded Geno Smith to Las Vegas and signed Sam Darnold in the offseason. So their starting quarterback is pretty much set for this upcoming season. They did re-sign Drew Lock, and they also have Sam Howell, and they have a developmental quarterback, Jaron Hall, who's not really expected to, compete for any backup positions or anything like that. But he spent most of the year last year on the practice squad. So that gives the Seahawks a full quarterback room. But despite that fact, John Schneider kind of teased that it wouldn't necessarily be out of the realm of possibility that they take a quarterback. Certainly not in the first round. This, if they do take a quarterback, would be most likely a day 3 pick, like a 5th, 6th round or something like that. First rounder, no. I mean, you don't do that after signing Sam Darnold to a big contract. But then again, the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to a big contract last offseason, and then they went ahead and they took Michael Penix with the 8th overall pick. So anything can happen with the NFL draft. That's what makes it exciting to follow and exciting to cover. So that's kind of it for the NFL news roundup that we have here for this first segment. We're going to kind of dive more into the NFL draft now here in the next chunk of the show here. Like I said, these next coming shows over the next couple of days or so are going to be very NFL draft heavy. So we're going to be talking a lot about the NFL draft and everything that could potentially happen and everything that will happen once it does happen. So just stick with us. We're going to take our first quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dive on into my mock draft pick for my latest mock draft. So stick with us. We'll be right back right after this.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Hey guys, welcome on back to the next segment of our show here. Before we go ahead and dive on into the mock draft that I've got here for this show, we're going to just remind you one more time, if you guys have a question or a comment that you want to contribute to the show, go ahead and hit the super chat button, and also visit the website GSMCsports.net if you want to tip or donate or just have a question or a comment that you want to leave there. You could definitely do that. So once again, that is GSMCsports.net. Or just hit us in the comment or the super chat button here on YouTube if you have a question or a comment that you want to contribute to the show. So let's go ahead and get into the next part of our show here. We're going to talk about NFL draft, and we're going to start with we'll start at the top, work our way down, because I think for the most part, most people kind of understand what's going to happen in the NFL draft this coming Thursday. So it's just going to kind of be a matter of what happens after those picks. Sorry, I'm trying to get my lights going here. But so with the first pick, I think everybody kind of already knows that it's going to be Cam Ward. That's who I have going to the Tennessee Titans. It's, not really much of a surprise there. Pretty much everybody, I believe, thinks that he's going to go there. He is the top-rated quarterback in this NFL draft, and of course the Titans are in need of a quarterback with Will Levis on the roster there. Not really been too impressed with him since he has been drafted. So they're going to bring in Cam Ward, and I don't know if this is going to be a instant Cam Ward starting. I would think it probably is, but maybe they have some sort of competition between Will Levis and Cam Ward, at least for this particular season, as Cam Ward is, of course, going to be drafted to be the future there. You don't draft a guy first overall just to have him sit behind Will Levis for the rest of his career. So, maybe it's a competition at first, but I think ultimately it's going to be Cam Ward that's going to be the week 1 starter, because I haven't seen enough in Will Levis to make me believe that he is going to be the starter week 1, especially if they draft a quarterback first overall. He's going to be starting week 1. Typically quarterbacks that are drafted that high, they usually are the ones that start, unless the team has a veteran in place already. And, maybe they want him to learn behind somebody. But there's not really a veteran in place in Tennessee right now. The only one that was there was Mason Rudolph, and he has since re-signed with Pittsburgh. And now they just have Will Levis on the roster. So they're going to need to fill that quarterback room regardless. But, Cam Ward would be a good addition to that quarterback room as they try and kind of rebuild that whole team with a new GM this year. Second-year head coach in Bill Callahan. We'll have to see how he does coming into this next year, his second year. Whole new GM, so whole new quarterback room probably. So it'll be a different type of offense that they're going to be running. We'll see if it's effective or not. There are still some weapons on that team, but the Titans are still a pretty far distance away from competing for like a playoff spot, wild card, something like that. But, as we've seen with, teams like the Texans, one quarterback, one good draft could completely change your outlook, and you could end up being a lot more competitive than what most people might think. Look what happened with Washington last year. Perfect example. I mean, Washington, I think a lot of people sort of figured they would be better, or at least trending in the right direction, but then they ended up going to the NFC Championship game with a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. So that's just an example of just, if you find the right guy, you never know what could happen. So the Titans are hoping that Cam Ward is their right guy. So we'll see. I'm sure it'll happen. That's pretty much the one obvious pick for this draft this year. But moving on, the second pick that I have, second pick is obviously the Cleveland Browns, but I have Travis Hunter going to the Browns. I know a lot of talk has been made about possibly Abdul Carter from Penn State, the edge rusher, going to Cleveland. I just don't see it. The way I see it is that the Browns just gave Myles Garrett a very, very large contract to remain their edge rusher for the foreseeable future. So if they were to go ahead and sign a guy like Abdul Carter, draft him, of course he'd be playing on his rookie contract, so it wouldn't be a big deal money-wise. But eventually you're going to run into a situation where you have to pay Myles Garrett, and you'll probably have to pay Abdul Carter once his rookie deal is up. So this kind of alleviates some of that complication. And the Cleveland defense is already pretty solid. So to pair Travis Hunter in that secondary with Denzel Ward and guys like that, I really think is a good pairing. And Travis Hunter, in my opinion, is a better corner than he is a wide receiver. Not to say that he's a bad wide receiver, because he's certainly not. He's a very good wide receiver. But I would not say that he is the top wide receiver in this wide receiver class, if you would, want to look at it that way. But I think corner, he's definitely right up there as amongst the best in the league, or best in the country, best in this draft in terms of corner prospects. So I think the Browns take Travis Hunter and shore up that secondary a little bit more. Plus, it gives you an X-factor type of player who can play wide receiver. You can put him in to some different packages. And that's kind of the way I think Travis Hunter is going to be utilized, no matter where he goes, whether it's Cleveland, New York, New England, possibly. That could be a sneaky team to look out for. But no matter where he goes, I feel like the only way you can really make it work is by having him commit to, as far as, mastering one particular position, because the NFL is a lot different than college football. There's not nearly as much games in college football as there are in the NFL when you take into account, postseason and all of the added games that Roger Goodell seemingly, always seems to want to add to the regular season. So it's only getting larger and larger of a league. So it's more and more games that keep, getting added on. So it's kind of like a durability issue. You don't want to have one player that just hardly ever comes off the field because he's playing mostly offense and then mostly defense as well. But I think if you could generate a way to get him maybe about 15 to 20 plays, like 15 to 20 snaps on offense, I think you could kind of limit his, exposure to, possibly getting hurt because of just overuse, overproduction. And every rookie seemingly always hits that rookie wall. So it's going to be very interesting to see if that rookie wall comes sooner for Travis Hunter than it does for anyone else, because he's playing two different positions. So I feel like if they can just utilize and just kind of hone in on one position for him to, master in the NFL, because that's the other thing is defensive concepts, offensive concepts when you're playing, in the NFL are a lot more complicated. So you can't be in the secondary or the defensive room in the meetings and also in the offensive meetings at the same time. You just can't. So they're gonna, whoever picks him up are gonna have to figure out a way to properly utilize him while also getting the most out of his abilities and his potential. So it'll be interesting to see how whatever team drafts him utilizes him this coming season. So that's going to be a story to watch. But moving on to number 3, the third pick, the New York Giants. I have them taking Abdul Carter from Penn State. I think you pair him along that line with Dexter Lawrence in the middle, and that it becomes a pretty formidable defensive line. Now, they did have a ton of trouble stuffing the run last year, and Abdul Carter, although he is a great pass rusher, he can also defend the run pretty well too. So that adds to that defensive line, and then that's going to upgrade the Giants' chances of being competitive, because they have made improvements offensively. Say what you want about Russell Wilson, he is an improvement over what they had last year with Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito splitting time for the most part. After Daniel Jones was given his exit papers, of course, but the Giants should, I think, be better this year, especially if they get the draft right, and if they get Abdul Carter, that is an instant playmaker on that defensive front. So that's going to improve the pass rush and improve the defense as a whole. Obviously, they still have a ton of work to do on that team. They're not, one player away from a Super Bowl or a playoff position even, but they should be better, I think, this year with a much more stable offense within the quarterback room anyway. As long as Russell Wilson can stay healthy, then I really think that the Giants can be better than they were last year, of course. And that's not really saying much because you're picking in the top 5. So if you're picking in the top 5, you typically didn't have a great year the previous year. So, but I think Abdul Carter would be an improvement. So he is the best edge rusher in the draft. Some people may argue that he could be the best player overall in the draft. But either way, I like the Giants to land him. So moving on to the 4th pick in the NFL draft, which is the New England Patriots. I have them going wide receiver because they definitely need some help for Drake May. I have them going Tet McMillan, the Arizona product, who is a big-bodied wide receiver, 6'5", 200 plus pounds, very big target, very good in the air, can make contested catches. Just the kind of receiver that you want a young quarterback who is still developing to have at his disposal. So having Tet McMillan there will definitely improve that offense. And, with Mike Vrabel is a very solid head coach, but it's not just Mike Vrabel that kind of gives stability into the New England coaching staff, but they're also bringing back, or have brought back, Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator from back when Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were still there. So that's going to help develop Drake May and getting him a big target, some more weapons to work with. will definitely help in his overall, growth as a quarterback and as a passer. So I think Ted McMillan would be a good addition here. I know they are possibly going to try and get Travis Hunter too. If Travis Hunter were to fall to them, I think this pick changes. I think they go Travis Hunter and don't take Ted McMillan if he's still available at that point. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think New England goes Ted McMillan here and upgrades the wide receiver room for Drake May. So the last pick that I have on this segment here, last pick I have on this segment here is the 5th pick, and it's the Jags. And I have them going defensive tackle Mason Graham out of Michigan. Mason Graham, of course, the top prospect at the defensive tackle position in this draft. He's, part of a tremendous defense that Michigan had over the past couple of years. They had that big win against Ohio State this year, even though the team as a whole, Michigan as a whole, struggled in a lot of instances, but they finished the season strong with big wins over Ohio State and Alabama. And Mason Graham was a big part of that. He is, a very, very strong defensive tackle, and the Jags need that right now. They need to shore up that defense. That defense has not been good in several years at this point. So there was possible talk that they could go running back, but I think this class is deep enough to where you can go best player available and then maybe address your needs later in the draft, where it's the second pick or a second round pick, third round pick, whatever the case. But right here you address best player available, and at that point it's Mason Graham, because the Jags are in a position where they should just take best player available outside of quarterback, or they don't really need quarterback, or maybe even wide receiver. They're not really in desperate need of a wide receiver right now. I'm sure they could use one, and they may just draft one at some point in this draft, but I don't think it's going to be with their first pick. So I think Mason Graham, from Michigan, goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that helps restart that defensive line and hopefully getting it to where it was just a few years ago when they had the Saxonville nickname and they were, causing havoc across the league with any team that played against them. They had a tremendous defense that year. So they're looking to get back to that, and Mason Graham would be a good step in the right direction. So those are my first 5 picks. When we come back, we're going to take another break here, but when we come back, we're going to continue on this mock draft. We've got 2 more segments of mock draft goodness here. So when we come back, we're going to be doing the next 5 picks, which is picks 6 through 10. So stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show, and we're going to continue on our mock draft here. We start with pick number 6 here, and we start this segment the same way we started the last segment, and that is with a sure thing. So number 6, my sure thing that I'm talking about is the, I almost said Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, and I have them picking Ashton Jeanty with the 6th overall pick. Of course, the highly touted running back from Boise State that has been talked about very, very positively throughout this whole process, and also has been compared in a lot of instances to Hall of Fame running back LaDainian Tomlinson. He has all of the traits that you look for in a great running back. He's one of those generational running backs that you get every now and then. They don't come along every single year, of course, but He has the potential to be an all-pro and, a very, very good asset to the Raiders. The Raiders are in desperate need of a running back to hold down that position for the foreseeable future. Last year, they only had Alexander Madison, and he only had about 400 yards, but he led the team in rushing. So Ashton Jeanty last year was just 28 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' single-season rushing yards record, and also had about 30 or so touchdowns when you combine receiving as well. He had a tremendous year and tremendous career overall for Boise State, and he was one of the finalists last year for the Heisman Trophy. Of course, that ended up going to Travis Hunter, but Ashton Jeanty on a normal year, when you didn't have a guy like Travis Hunter who could play two different positions, if you didn't have a guy like that, you would think Ashton Jeanty was probably winning the Heisman Trophy last year, if not for Travis Hunter. So that's kind of the two that were in the running for the Heisman, really. That was the two that people kind of thought the most were going to win the Heisman, and of course it went to Travis Hunter. But Ashton Jeanty would be a huge step for the Oakland or the Las Vegas Raiders as they kind of try and rebuild a sort of Seattle type of team there. Because if they go ahead and they get Ashton Jeanty, then you kind of start thinking, okay, you got Pete Carroll here. Then you have Geno Smith, who is a former Seahawk as well. And then you have a talented running back to set everything up for the Raiders. And, of course, that is Ashton Jeanty. So then you have the guys that you want. And you have some good players on defense as well with Max Crosby. So if you can just shore up the defensive secondary a little bit and maybe, kind of boost up that defensive line or the defensive front a little bit more outside of Max Crosby, then, maybe the Raiders are way more competitive this year than a lot of people think, because that's kind of all the types of, ingredients that the old Seattle Seahawks used to use, great running game, solid defense, and, decent quarterback play, which you can get from Geno Smith, who has definitely improved as a quarterback from when he was first taken by the New York Jets way back several years ago. So the Raiders, I think, are a very interesting team to watch this year if they go ahead and they get Ashton Jeanty. I think that's going to be a very tough division, a very competitive division. The Raiders, I still think, are the fourth best team in that division right now, but I do see some positive things coming from them this offseason, and getting Ashton Jeanty would be just another thing that is positive for them this offseason. So we'll see what they end up deciding to do, but I do think that this is pretty much a lock that Ashton Jeanty's going there. But who knows? A team could, shock everybody, maybe trade up before the Raiders to try and get him. Who knows? But moving on to the next pick, I have the New York Jets, of course, have the 7th pick, and I have them taking tight end Tyler Warren out of Penn State. Now, this kind of comes with a little bit of an asterisk because there is, in my opinion, I think there is a possibility that you could see a possible trade up to before this spot by the Indianapolis Colts, because they are in desperate need of a tight end in their room. Of course, quarterback, that's another issue, but I don't think they address quarterback this year. I think they're waiting till next year. Of course, they've got Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson who are going to be, competing for the starting spot this year. But I think tight end is a big need for the Indianapolis Colts. So whether it's a big enough need to trade up, because it's a pretty good tight end class. So even if you don't get the best tight end in the class, which is Tyler Warren, then you can still get some solid tight ends, in the rest of the class. But not saying that the Colts are absolutely going to do this, but it's just something just to kind of keep an eye on. I think they could be a team that could be linked to a possible trade up. If there is a trade up at all, I think they're the most likely team to trade up into the top 10 to try and grab him. But I like Tyler Warren for the Jets. You of course have Justin Fields, who just signed in the offseason, coming over from Pittsburgh. He signed a 2-year deal, $30 million guaranteed, $40 million over 2 years, of course. And so that's kind of a contract that's sort of like a prove-it contract. You don't want to commit to the guy past 2 years if he flops like he did in Chicago. And, of course, the Steelers didn't think that he was good enough to retain him. So now that he's with the Jets, a whole new coaching staff there, so it's going to be a different type of environment in terms of the coaching staff. So maybe that's a positive thing for Justin Fields. And of course, there is some familiarity there because the Detroit Lions, a former defensive coordinator, had to go up and create game plans against Justin Fields when Justin Fields was a Chicago Bear. So they played each other twice a year. So he's very familiar with Justin Fields. So maybe that helps now that since he knows what Justin is good at, possibly that could, lead to some success for the Jets. And, of course, getting more targets for the Jets. Of course, they have Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. Maybe they get another guy in the draft later on, but tight end would be a good first step. Last year, there was talk that they wanted to get Brock Bowers, but that didn't end up working out. The Raiders got him. But now they're in a position to grab the best tight end in the class, and that's Tyler Warren. So it's possible that they go ahead and they grab him. So I look at that as a potential pick there. So Jets with Tyler Warren. So moving on, 8th pick of the draft, we have the Carolina Panthers, and I have them going wide receiver here to try and help Bryce Young and that young offense. I've got them going Matthew Golden out of Texas. And Matthew Golden, as we all know, people who had watched and followed the Combine, he was the fastest wide receiver in terms of the 40-yard dash, posted the fastest time amongst all the receivers. So he's got the speed. He's got everything that you would want in a receiver. Good slot guy. He can run routes very well. Good hands. So the Panthers have made it pretty clear that they're looking to try and upgrade the weapons that Bryce Young can work with. Dave Canales, the head coach, has said on a couple instances, a couple situations in the offseason that they're looking to try and upgrade that wide receiver position because it is a big need. They did re-sign Adam Thielen in the offseason, but Adam Thielen is kind of up there in age, so you don't really know how much you're going to get out of him. He's not really a starting wide receiver caliber anymore, so you want to get some young faces in there to pair with Bryce Young and develop that chemistry that is so important for wide receivers and quarterbacks to have. So I think Matthew Golden would be a good fit for the Panthers, and the Panthers actually have a little bit of optimism coming into this year. I mean, of course, they're not optimistic in terms of thinking they're going to win a Super Bowl or anything, but the way this last year ended, when Bryce Young kind of bounced back from a really, really tough start to the season and tough start to his career, to be honest, but he ended up getting benched for Andy Dalton, but then the unforeseen circumstance of Andy Dalton getting hurt in that car accident led to Bryce Young being put back in the lineup. And then once he was, you could kind of start to see what people loved about him so much coming out of Alabama. Some of the things that he was able to do at Alabama, you started to kind of see a little bit of that. And there's a lot more optimism now than there was this time last year coming into an NFL draft. So having Bryce Young with a little bit of confidence, too, certainly helps. And if you get him a pretty good weapon in Matthew Golden, then that'll only help his development even more. And Matthew Golden is a really good receiver. At least he was at Texas. So, I think it's an improvement on their team overall if they were to do that. But going on to the next pick, one of the more interesting picks here in the entire NFL draft, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Given the situation that has happened over the course of the past few days or so with Derek Carr and his potential injury, the shoulder injury kind of coming out of nowhere, now it kind of puts it up in the air as to what they're going to do in the NFL draft. And I have them taking Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. I think he drops to number 9. I don't think he falls out of the top 10. Just because of this whole situation with Derek Carr. I think that kind of throws a wrench into a lot of things in the NFL draft this year, but in particular the Saints, it changes what they're going to potentially do, I think, because now you're kind of in a situation with Derek Carr where he has had injury issues multiple times since coming to New Orleans, and even when he was in Las Vegas / Oakland, he had some injury issues as well, and he's getting older. They just restructured his contract so that he would still be on the roster, at least for the next few years, but this injury kind of coming out of nowhere, it's starting to kind of think that maybe the Saints are looking in another direction at the quarterback position. So I think this is where Shedeur Sanders ultimately falls to, and I have the Saints picking him. So the last pick in this particular draft here is Omarion Hampton from UNC, the North Carolina Tar Heel running back. And I have him going to the Bears at number 10. And some people might push back on me saying, oh, well, they still have DeAndre Swift. But DeAndre Swift hasn't really risen to the level that they wanted him to. So really they've been rebuilding a lot about that team. But the thing that they haven't really addressed yet is the running back position. And I think this is a good way to do that. It's a very good running back class. Omarion Hampton is the second best running back in the class, and they have the potential to grab him because there are other teams that pick shortly after them that could be in the running back market as well. So he's not going to fall to the second round or anything. So this is a good way for the Bears to really improve that team. I mean, they've done a great job defensively and offensively as far as the lines are concerned, the trenches are concerned. They've done a good job rebooting those particular position groups. So this would be a good step in that direction in terms of getting the offense on track and getting Caleb Williams on track. And if you give Caleb Williams a nice, athletic, bruising running back like Omarion Hampton is, then that could just really change his game and improve his game, because it would take a lot of pressure off of him to be able to make some crazy plays just to kind of keep him in the game. But Omarion Hampton is arguably the most athletic running back in the draft this year. It's just, of course, you've got Ashton Genty, who is, the top prospect. He's got all the numbers and all the accolades and everything. But Omarion Hampton is not only a bruiser of a running back, tough running back, but he is also pretty quick for a bigger guy. He's pretty quick. He's fast. He's elusive, but he could also run you over. So Omarion Hampton is the full package at running back, and I think the Bears would be doing a very good job getting him with that pick. So those are my top 10 picks. And when we come back, this fourth segment that we have, we're going to finish the mock draft for this episode, and we're going to do picks 11 through 15. But stick with us. We're just going to take another quick break. But when we come back, we're going to get right into that. Okay, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to do our final mock draft segment of tonight's episode. We're going to do picks 11 through 15. I've covered picks 1 through 10 already, so go ahead and go back and check that out if you're just joining us now. But let's get on into the next segment here. So the picks 11 through 15, we're going to start with number 11, and that is the 49ers, and I have them going edge rusher. I have them going Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, and I just think that this would be a good pairing to kind of revamp that defense that has lost a lot of pieces this offseason due to various free agency moves and trades and things of that nature. The defensive line needs an upgrade. Of course, they've still got Bosa on one side. You go ahead and get Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. You could also put another number of guys on this list if you're looking for edge rusher. There's not really a bad pick here. You've got guys like Mike Green from Marshall. You could go ahead and throw him in there as well. A lot of guys that you can pick at edge rusher, or just defensive tackle in general. But I like Walter Nolan going to the 49ers here. I think it's a good fit. 49ers, like I said, missed or lost a lot of guys, especially on that defensive line or just the defense in general. They have some issues of their own on offense, of course, but I still think this is a very good team overall. So if they just kind of get a couple of pieces here and there, if they draft very well, then there's no reason to believe that they won't. But if they draft very well, then they could be in the conversation for a playoff spot again this coming year after having a really forgettable year last year with dealing with all the injuries and everything that they had to deal with. But they had a guy like Walter Nolan kind of rebuild that pass rush a little bit. I think that would be a good fit for the 49ers. So moving on, I have with the 12th pick, I have the Dallas Cowboys, and I have them selecting running back TreVeyon Henderson out of Ohio State. And this is another team that is in desperate need of a running back. They haven't had one really since the first couple of years of Ezekiel Elliott's tenure. Of course, they had Tony Pollard for a little bit there, and then last year they had Rico Dowdle for the most part running the ball. But they need to shore up that position. That is a big hole on that team, on that offense. And, of course, that takes any time the Cowboys can run the ball very well. That's really when their offense succeeds the most. When that offensive line is able to get push and able to move the pot or, move the defensive line backwards and create holes for those running backs. That's when the Cowboys are at their best, when the offensive line is working well. And having a talented running back like TreVeyon Henderson there would be a good pickup for Ohio State. Now, this is another position where you could put a number of guys in this same exact spot, and they would be worthy because it's a very deep running back draft class. There's several guys that I haven't even mentioned. TreVeyon Henderson's running mate, Quinshon Judkins, out of Ohio State, of course. Both of those guys were 1,000-yard rushers last year, so you could even put him there. Cam Scatterbo is another guy that people talk about a lot from Arizona State. Had a ton of workload at Arizona State, but he's durable, so that's a thing to look out for as well. Just there's a number of guys at the running back position that can be got. So the Cowboys, I think, would be in their best interest to address the running back position in this particular draft, and I think getting the best player available at that position when they pick is the best option, And who knows, Omarion Hampton is a guy that I kind of thought about putting here instead of putting them up by the Bears, because the Bears could go in a different direction. They may not go running back. They may go in a different direction. Who knows? But I think if Omarion Hampton is available when the Cowboys pick at 12, I would say they're going to probably draft him, but if it goes the way my mock draft is going here, then I think TreVeyon Henderson would be the next best option for the Cowboys to go ahead and draft. So we'll see what they decide to do, but I think the Cowboys really need some help in the running back position. So we'll see. But moving on, we've got the Dolphins at the 13th pick. Now, this one changed a little bit just in recent weeks or so with the whole talk with Jalen Ramsey and how the Dolphins are potentially going to be parting ways with him, trading him away. So this kind of opens up a position of need now, and that's the cornerback position. And I have them taking Jahdae Barron from Texas, one of the best corner prospects coming out of the draft this year. He is one of those guys that can really, really do a good job replacing Jalen Ramsey. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, of course, in his prime was the best corner in the league at the time, but he's not quite the guy that he used to be, but he's still talented. But that's a guy that you're going to have to replace, and they've already lost some help in that secondary with Javon Holland going to the Giants, so they need to shore up that secondary in some way, and I think Jahdae Barron would be a good asset for that secondary to have as the Dolphins hopefully try and get over that hump and maybe get into the playoffs and possibly host a game instead of having to travel in December and January. But this would be a good step in the right direction to kind of shore up the secondary so they're not getting beat with explosive play so much, especially in a division that, has the likes of MVP Josh Allen, there, and improving teams around them as well. So the Dolphins, I think, picking Jahdae Barron would be smart overall. So going to the 14th pick, a team that we briefly discussed when we were talking about the Jets and the tight end position, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Now, again, like I said in the previous segment, when we were talking about Tyler Warren, I think this is a possibility that the Colts could try and move up to get ahead of the Jets and possibly draft Tyler Warren best player at the tight end position that's available. But if they don't, I have them going ahead and selecting Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. Elijah Arroyo is another guy that I'll kind of keep an eye on as well at this spot. But Colston Loveland, I think, is a good pickup for the Colts. Their issue is at quarterback, really, but they're probably not going to address quarterback this particular season, as I think they're going to go ahead and wait for next season when a much better draft class is in the quarterback position is going to be coming out into the NFL draft. So shoring up the tight end position, they really have not had that really, really great tight end on that offense in many, many years, really since the Luck days. But even before that, I mean, when Andrew Luck was here, there wasn't, a crazy amount of talent at the tight end position, but there were a couple of guys that he played with that, were solid. But really, when you look at tight end in the Colts, at least for me anyway, I mean, I might be showing my age here, but when I think tight ends with the Colts, I think Dallas Clark, back when Peyton Manning was still throwing the ball around for the Colts. That was kind of the standard for tight end that was set for the Colts anyway. They haven't been that team since then, of course. And, obviously a lot of that has to do with not having one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time anymore. So when you go from that to what their quarterback situation is now with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, that's a huge drop-off there, of course. But Colston Loveland, I think, would be a solid pickup for the Colts. They need help in that position. That's probably their biggest need in the offseason remaining. At this point, they've addressed some things via free agency, but tight end is the real position that they really do need to address. So I have Colston Loveland from Michigan going to the Colts. So the next pick, final pick of this segment here, I have the Atlanta Falcons with the 15th pick taking edge rusher Mike Green from Marshall. Now, this is a guy that we talked about previously when we were talking about the 49ers and their edge rusher, Walter Nolan, that I have mocked going to them. But the Falcons are another team that needs to improve that position. They got rid of some guys on the defensive line, Grady Jarrett, most notably the defensive tackle, being traded over to the Bears. And they need some type of help at the pass rusher position. And the Falcons, they get a lot of talk about the Kirk Cousins situation, and rightfully so. I mean, I get it, but really you need to start looking at the rest of the team, because the quarterback position, I think, is set regardless of what Kirk Cousins' feelings might be. The quarterback position is set there, and I don't think they go they can't possibly shock us again this year and take another quarterback. There's no way. At least I think there's no way. But I think the edge rusher is a good position for the Falcons to go ahead and get a guy like Mike Green, who is coming from a school that's kind of unheralded a lot of the times. But Marshall, one of the best players that they have in the draft, comes from Marshall, and that's Mike Green. And he's a great pass rusher. He's got all the physical tools that you want in an edge rusher. He's got the physical build, got the speed, got the strength, all of those things, and I think the Falcons need that desperately on that defense, especially along that defensive line. So adding Mike Green, I think, would be a good job for the Falcons. So those are my first 15 picks of the draft, and of course the draft coming up on Thursday, and we're going to be diving into all of the picks and all of that, and reviewing who had the best draft, all of those things. Once the draft gets going and once the draft is over, we're still going to have tons of conversations, tons of topics about this particular event. So we're going to come back. We're going to take one final break, and we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk some college football. And this is going to be our college corner, and we're going to do a season preview of the Washington Huskies. So, of course, they are entering their second year in the Big Ten. We're going to talk about what we could possibly expect out of them this coming season. So stick with us, and we will be right back right after this final break. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. And we are now on the final segment of the day. We're going to be talking some Washington Huskies football. And, of course, last year, taking a look back at what they did last year, 6-7 was their final record. Missed out on the bowl game. They didn't have a very great year overall. Head coach Jed Fish led a team that was kind of a mixed bag. They had a pretty strong start, but then they struggled on the road pretty mightily throughout the course of the season, and that ultimately led to their 6-7 record. Despite that high turnover of players that they had the previous season, their offense performed relatively well, particularly in the passing and rushing efficiency, at least. Defensively, they had some struggles. The defense, especially the defensive line, struggled throughout the season, led to a high number of sacks and pressures. They weren't very good against the run, so it really contributed to them having a less than stellar record. Their inability to win consistently on the road was a big factor as well. And they had a pretty disappointing record on the road as a result. And while it was kind of a learning experience overall for this Washington team, there were signs of progress and potential for future success. Of course, they had to kind of deal with a whole new quarterback room last year after losing Michael Penix to the NFL draft. So they had to kind of adjust to that, and that's never an easy adjustment when you have a very good quarterback, and then you have to kind of move on without him and try and continue to be successful despite that. So it's always going to be a tough ask for any team to do that. But it was a learning experience for this team. And looking forward to this season, they have a new quarterback, DeMond Williams Jr., the redshirt freshman. He's expected to be the starting quarterback. He has a lot of physical gifts. He's an explosive quarterback, and they really improved when he was in the lineup last year as a redshirt. So backup quarterback competition. Of course, you have Williams is going to be the starting quarterback. There's not really too much debate in that right now, but second string quarterback role is pretty wide open. Kai Horton, transfer from Tulane, as well as incoming freshmen such as Dash Bayerly and Treston Kinney McKillen. They're all vying for that quarterback or that backup quarterback position, that second string quarterback. Their offense did improve last year, like I said, when Williams took over as the full-time quarterback. If the offensive line can improve to kind of at least like an average offensive line, not even, they don't have to be amazing. If they can just be decent in like pass protection and they're able to, run block a little bit better, they should be able to make more plays kind of on schedule and let Williams kind of not have to play this backyard type of football all the time, despite the fact that he was quite good at it when he did it last year at times. But you don't want to always have to rely on that. You want to be able to get plays on time and, develop a chemistry and a rhythm on your offense. You don't want to just always, kind of hope that a play breaks down and your quarterback is able to just kind of use his physical tools and physical gifts to be able to overcome a kind of a backyard sort of play or a mismanaged sort of play, however you want to call it, whatever word you want to use. But if they can improve the offensive line, that is, then maybe it'll be a little bit more cohesion for that offense. But the running back situation is promising, so that is some positive things. Senior running back Jonah Coleman, he's going to be returning after he had a 1,000-yard season last year. Very, very highly regarded at the running back position is Coleman. He was recognized as one of the nation's top returning running backs, and he's expected to be the primary rusher for Washington. There's going to be some other guys in that room as well, Adam Muhammad and other promising players like Jordan Washington, Julian McMahon, and Quade Carr. All of those guys are expected to get some sort of playing time, but Jonah Coleman is the senior back. He is the guy that's going to be running the show, so to speak. he's basically bringing his effectiveness and his experience to this running back room. His ability to kind of run between the tackles and catch passes out of the backfield very well as well. So his ability to do both of those things will be very, very valuable. As far as Adam Muhammad, one of the guys fighting for that backup position, he's a true freshman from Arizona, gained a lot of experience, some valuable experience and limited action that he saw last year, and he's expected to be a key backup, potentially receiving a significant number of carries, but still not enough to overtake Coleman as the starter. Jordan Washington, he's another freshman. He's known for his speed and could be a dynamic option in open field situations like catching balls out of the backfield, things of that nature. A couple of other guys that are just rounding out the running back room, Julian McMahon and Quaid Carr. Both McMahon and Carr are freshmen as well, and they're expected to contribute to the depth and rotation at the running back position. So it's a pretty young running back group outside of Jonah Coleman. You take him out of the conversation, and it's pretty much all freshmen, except for Adam Muhammad, who is a sophomore. But it's going to be a interesting running back room, but Jonah Coleman should be that guy that leads them all. So the young guys, if they can all develop, that's going to be a pretty promising, young, talented group with the depth and versatility that they kind of have potential to reach. So we'll see if they're able to do that. But at the wide receiver position, their room is looking pretty strong. They've got experienced guys like Denzel Boston returning and some new additions like Amari Evans coming over from Penn State. And they've also got a pretty promising freshman class coming in as well. But Denzel Boston, last year, he had 63 catches for 834 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's expected to be the key player, the key receiver for this Washington Huskies group. Omari Evans, who was, of course, a transfer from Penn State, he's supposed to be a pretty significant contributor as well. He is a significant deep threat. He has 21 receptions, 415 yards, and 5 touchdowns last season with Penn State in that playoff run that they had, leading all the way up until the game before the national championship game, in which they lost. So, but a lot of other guys that are on that group, some young guys, freshmen, Chris Lawson, Marcus Harris, and Raiden Vines Bright, a group of highly rated recruits. They could contribute pretty early on this offense as well. Desmond Roebuck and Deji Ajos, 3-star recruits who will also be joining the team in the summertime. So they've got a good mix of experience and talent with those potential players, and with those players, they do have a strong potential for a strong receiving core. So we'll have to see how they, go ahead and shake out as we move forward here in the spring ball and then leading into our regular season games when they kick off in the summer or in the fall. So those new additions, particularly Amari Evans, could really help the Huskies kind of get back to a more dynamic passing game like they had when Michael Penix was running the show. But the freshman class has the potential to make an immediate impact, and they can provide some quality depth in the receiving core as well. So it's also going to be linked to the quarterback. It's, as wide receivers go, so do the quarterbacks. If a wide receiver can't get the ball to him, then he can't make those stats that, get him those high draft picks and, high paydays when he gets into the NFL and all that. So it's going to really depend on that young quarterback too. So it's going to be an exciting offense to watch. A lot of young players, but a lot of talented young players as well. So moving on to the defense here as we close things out. Washington lost 2 of their starters during the year last year along the defensive line, Javon Parker and Zach Durfee. And without them on the field, the group really did struggle. They couldn't really get pressure on the quarterback. They only had 15.5 sacks between those guys. So the grand total that they had was 20. So not really what you want to be at. You want to be able to generate more pressure than that. Once they got to physical running teams, they really did have a hard time stopping the run. They were able to kind of, make their way pretty well when they played lesser teams. But anytime they played a team that had a very strong running game, that's when you really started to see the holes in the lineup. But once the transfer portal opened up in early December, Washington, they kind of got to work, and they brought in some guys like Samote Pepa from Utah and Terrio Thompson from Western Michigan, and those kind of guys to help bolster things up front. And both Pepa and Thompson will battle for starting jobs this offseason along the interior. Linebacker coach Robert Bala left after one season to coach at Florida, and he was replaced by the now linebacker coach Brian Odom, formerly of USC. So some changes on defense overall. So we'll have to see. But 98% of the total tackles, 89% of the tackles for loss, and 100% of the sacks are gone amongst that linebacker group. So 4 linebackers remain from the 2024 season. So a lot of change going on the defensive side of the ball for Washington. But of those 4 linebackers that remain, 1 redshirted after transferring from Michigan, and that was Hayden Moore. 1 was a walk-on that didn't register any sacks at all, and that was Griffin Miller. And the other 2 combined for just 4 tackles and 1 tackle for a loss, and those were Anthony Ward and Devin Bryant. So a lot of young guys on that defense now with the turnover there. But head coach Jed Fish knew he had a lot of work to do revamping this linebacker core. So the first step really in doing that was getting a new defensive coordinator, and that is Ryan Walters coming in to be the new DC at Washington. He likes to play with more defenders in the tackle box, so expect those 2 linebackers to be very aggressive, as well as those 5 defensive linemen that they have up front in those situations. Statistically, Washington's secondary was one of the best in the country last year. They ranked 2nd in the country in passing yards allowed, and they allowed opponents to just complete 55% of their passes. So those numbers are very, very good numbers, but you have to kind of take into consideration how awful they were against the run, and teams were kind of more run heavy against them because that was their weakness. So those numbers might be a little bit skewed in terms of the how efficient they were defending the pass, but they still, had to make those plays when they did. So there was some, talent there in the secondary. They had just 8 interceptions, though, and 4 of those went to linebackers. So the secondary only had, 4 interceptions between all of them in the entire season. So that's not really, where you want to be as a secondary. You want to be able to be more opportunistic and be able to get those turnovers and things like that. But there's some promising things, though, for the Washington defense at least. So some young guys coming in. So it should be at least a little bit improved. The group of secondary players, 2 of the biggest 2 of the biggest corners in the league size-wise are going to be their likely starters come this season. So the secondary should be decent. Maybe not as good as they were last year, possibly, but they should still be decent. So we'll have to see. But overall, for the Washington Huskies, it's not if you take a look at their schedule a little bit, it's not a terribly awful schedule, but it's going to kind of be hard to find any kind of flow for any kind of long stretch at home because they have so many tough games in between each other. But every other week, that the road trip thing might kind of get to Washington into a kind of a different sort of groove because it's like every other week they have a road game. It's kind of where their schedule is. So maybe that kind of gets them in a little bit of a rhythm. If they can go maybe 1-2 against teams like Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon, but then maybe start like a 3-0, something like that against the lesser opponents, they could be looking at possibly a decent year. 4-2 to start the year, I think, is definitely an improvement over what they might have thought that they were going to do after last year. So I think they can get to maybe about 7-8 wins. I don't see it being any more than that, but I think they can bounce back from a pretty subpar year last year. So we'll have to see overall. But that's going to do it. That kind of covers everything for this show. I hope you guys all enjoyed the show, as I always enjoy doing it. And like I said, this week is going to be very draft heavy. So expect a lot of these shows to kind of go this way with a lot of NFL draft talk, some mocks, things like that. So Either way, we're here for it. We're here to cover the draft. But I thank you guys all for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast. We're presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Of course, your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. Really does make a difference. And we also invite you to follow us on all the social medias for more content and updates. Thank you guys once again for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. See you next time, tomorrow night on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit and the coffee ain't hit.